I never thought a phone call from my insurance company would turn into a full-blown investigation that would land 3 people in handcuffs. But here we are. My name is Ethan Fitzgerald, and I had been living in my dream home in Scottsdale, Arizona, for exactly 3 years when everything went sideways. The house itself was perfect, a beautiful 4-bedroom Spanish colonial with a red tile roof, stucco walls, and a backyard that opened up to views of the desert mountains. I had worked my entire adult life to afford this place, saving every penny from my job as a software engineer. The neighborhood was upscale, quiet, and had all the amenities you could want. The only problem? The Saguaro Heights Homeowners Association. More specifically, the problem was Patricia Connolly. Patricia was the HOA president, a 52-year-old woman with blonde highlights that were always freshly done, designer athleisure wear that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and an attitude that suggested she owned every blade of grass in the neighborhood personally. She had been president for 7 years, which should have been a red flag from the start, but I had been too excited about the house to pay attention during the closing process. The first year had been fine. I kept my lawn immaculate, painted my front door an approved shade of desert tan, and never left my trash cans out past collection day. I was the model homeowner. Year 2 started getting complicated when I installed solar panels. They were approved by the Architectural Review Committee after a lengthy process, but Patricia had voted against them. She made sure I knew it too, stopping by my house personally to tell me how unsightly they were and how they degraded the aesthetic value of the neighborhood. I had smiled politely and closed the door. Year 3 was when things truly went off the rails. It started in March. I came home from work one Tuesday evening to find a violation notice stuck to my front door. The offense: my lawn was excessively brown and violated community standards. I stood there staring at the notice, completely baffled. We were in the middle of a drought. The city had actually asked residents to reduce water usage. My lawn was no browner than anyone else's on the street. In fact, my next-door neighbor's lawn was practically beige, and he had no notice on his door. I called the HOA management company the next day. The woman on the phone, a tired-sounding administrator named Gloria, sighed when I explained the situation. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I'll be honest with you," she said. "Mrs. Connolly has been particularly focused on your property lately. This is the 3rd notice she's submitted about your home in the past month." "3rd? I only received 1. The other 2 I didn't process because they were frivolous. She claimed your mailbox was the wrong shade of black and that your driveway had an oil stain. I drove by your house myself to verify, and both claims were baseless." My stomach dropped. "So what do I do about this lawn citation?" "Water your lawn more, I guess? Or you could dispute it at the next board meeting." I watered my lawn. I watered it every other day, drought be damned. I even hired a lawn service to ensure it stayed green. The bill was astronomical, but I figured it was worth it to get Patricia off my back. 2 weeks later, I got another notice. This time, my lawn was excessively green and suggested inappropriate water usage during a drought period. I actually laughed when I read it. It was so absurd that I could not believe it was real. But it was real, and it came with a $200 fine. That was when I decided to attend the next HOA board meeting. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse on a Thursday evening. About 30 homeowners showed up, which was apparently a good turnout. Patricia sat at the head of a long table with 4 other board members, 2 men who looked like they would rather be anywhere else, and 2 women who seemed to hang on Patricia's every word. I waited through 15 minutes of budget discussions and debates about whether the community pool needed retiling before I raised my hand during the open forum section. "Yes, Ethan," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Do you have a concern to share?" "I do. I've received 2 contradictory violation notices about my lawn in the past month. First it was too brown, then it was too green. I'd like clarification on what the actual standard is." One of the board members, a man named Robert, frowned and flipped through some papers. "I don't see any lawn violations in our recent filings." Patricia's smile tightened. "They were preliminary warnings, Robert, not official violations." "But they came with fines," I said, $200 each." "That's our standard penalty for non-compliance," Patricia replied smoothly. For non-compliance? With what standard? I pressed. My lawn looks identical to every other lawn on my street. Several homeowners murmured in agreement. I saw a few people nodding. Patricia's face flushed slightly. Mr. Fitzgerald, if you have an issue with HOA enforcement, you're welcome to submit a formal complaint in writing. This is not the appropriate venue for your grievances. Actually, the bylaws state that open forum is exactly the appropriate venue for addressing enforcement concerns, said a woman sitting 2 rows behind me. I turned to see a friendly-looking redhead in her 40s. I'm Valerie Novak. I'm an attorney, and I live on Cactus Ridge Drive. I've also been receiving what I would call harassing violation notices from Mrs. Connolly. Patricia stood up abruptly. This meeting is not a platform for attacking board members. If there are no other legitimate concerns, we're adjourned. We still have 20 minutes scheduled, Robert said, looking confused. Adjourned, Patricia snapped, and she walked out. After the meeting, Valerie approached me in the parking lot. She's been targeting you, hasn't she? Is it that obvious? She did the same thing to me last year. I planted roses in my front yard, and suddenly I was getting violation notices weekly. Wrong color mulch, bushes not trimmed to exact specifications. My house numbers were supposedly half an inch too large. It was relentless. What did you do? I threatened legal action. She backed off, but only because my husband is a partner at a major law firm in Phoenix and she knew I wasn't bluffing. Most people don't have those resources, so she just harasses them until they either comply with her insane demands or sell their homes. That's insane. That's Patricia Connolly. I drove home that night feeling frustrated, but not defeated. I figured I would just keep my head down, maintain my property to reasonable standards, and avoid giving Patricia any legitimate ammunition. Then May arrived, and everything changed, and everything. I was at work when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my insurance company, Fortress Home Insurance. I answered, expecting maybe a routine policy review or a premium adjustment notification. Mr. Fitzgerald, this is Derek Chen from Fortress Home Insurance. I'm calling regarding your homeowner's policy. Okay, I said, stepping out of my office into the hallway for privacy. Is there a problem? We've received some concerning reports about your property, and I need to discuss them with you before we proceed with any decisions. My heart rate picked up. What kind of reports? We received a formal complaint from your HOA president, Patricia Connolly, 3 days ago. She submitted documentation claiming that your property has multiple safety violations, including structural damage to your roof, a cracked foundation, and evidence of unpermitted construction. She stated these issues pose significant liability risks and that you've refused to address them despite multiple warnings. I stood there in the hallway, completely speechless for a moment. That's completely false. Every single part of that is a lie. I understand this is concerning, Mr. Fitzgerald. However, we have to investigate all claims that could affect our risk assessment. Mrs. Connolly also submitted photographs. Photographs of what? My house is in perfect condition. I'm looking at them now. They show significant roof damage, cracks in what appears to be a foundation, and what looks like an unpermitted addition to the rear of a structure. Can you email those to me right now? Because I'm telling you, those are not photographs of my property. I can do that. Hold on. I heard typing, and a moment later, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I opened it while Derek waited on the line. The photographs made my blood run cold. There were 6 images. The first showed a roof with multiple missing tiles and visible water damage. The second showed a foundation with a massive crack running along the base of a wall. The third through 6th showed various angles of what did appear to be unpermitted construction, a shabby-looking addition that was clearly not up to code. None of it was my house. The roof tiles were wrong. My house had traditional red Spanish tiles. The roof in the photo had flat concrete tiles. The stucco color was different. The desert landscaping was completely wrong. Even the mountain view in the background didn't match. Derek, I'm looking at these photos right now, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that this is not my property. This isn't even my neighborhood. Look at the address on my policy and then look at these photos. Nothing matches. There was a pause. You're right. Now that you mention it, I don't see a house number or any identifying markers in these photos. Because she submitted photos of a completely different property and claimed it was mine. This is fraud. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Fitzgerald. And filing a false insurance claim is a serious crime. Derek, I need you to investigate this properly. I can provide photos of my actual property. I can give you my contractor's contact information. I have inspection reports from when I purchased the house 3 years ago. Everything will show that my property is in excellent condition. Derek was quiet for a moment. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a hold on any policy decisions and open an official investigation. I'll need you to send me documentation about your property, and I'm going to send one of our field adjusters to inspect your home in person. Would tomorrow work? Tomorrow's perfect. I'm also going to contact Mrs. Connolly and request clarification about these photographs and how she obtained them. If what you're saying is true, this is indeed insurance fraud, and we take that very seriously. I spent the rest of the day in a fury. I left work early and drove straight home, where I walked around my property taking dozens of photographs from every conceivable angle. My roof was perfect. My foundation was solid. There was no unpermitted construction. Everything was exactly as it had been when I bought the place, just better maintained. That evening, I called Valerie Novak. She answered on the second ring. Valerie, this is Ethan Fitzgerald. We met at the HOA meeting last month. I remember. What's going on? I explained everything. The phone call from the insurance company, the fake photographs, the fraud allegations. She listened without interrupting. Ethan, this is way beyond HOA harassment. This is criminal. She's attempting to force your insurance company to drop your coverage based on fabricated evidence. Do you know what happens to homeowners who lose their insurance? They can't get a mortgage, I said slowly, the full implication dawning on me. Exactly. Most mortgage companies require continuous insurance coverage. If your policy gets canceled, your lender could technically call your entire loan due immediately. And good luck finding another insurance company willing to cover you after a cancellation for property violations. Patricia isn't just harassing you, she's trying to force you to lose your home. Why? What did I do to her? My guess? You probably didn't do anything. Some people like Patricia just need to feel powerful, and the HOA gives her that power. Or maybe she has a friend who wants to buy in this neighborhood, and she's trying to create inventory. I've seen it happen. So what do I do? First, cooperate fully with your insurance company's investigation. Make sure they have everything they need to prove those photos are fake. Second, document everything Patricia does from here on out. Every interaction, every email, every violation notice. Third, consider filing a police report for fraud. Will the police actually do anything? Probably not immediately, but it creates an official record. And Ethan, be careful. If Patricia is willing to commit insurance fraud, there's no telling what else she might do when she realizes her plan isn't working. The next day, Friday, a field adjuster from Fortress Home Insurance arrived at my house at 10 in the morning. His name was Marcus Webb, a middle-aged black man with a no-nonsense demeanor and a very thorough inspection process. He spent 2 hours examining every inch of my property, taking photographs, making notes, and asking questions. Mr. Fitzgerald, I've been doing this job for 18 years, he said as he packed up his equipment. Your property is in excellent condition. The roof is maybe 5 years old, well maintained, no damage whatsoever. Foundation is solid. All the construction is permitted and up to code according to county records. There's absolutely nothing here that would justify an insurance claim or policy cancellation. So what happens now? I file my report with the company, and they'll compare it to the photos that were submitted by Mrs. Connolly. Then it goes to our fraud investigation department. How long does that take? A couple weeks maybe, but Ethan, between you and me, those photos she submitted aren't even close to matching your property. I noticed it immediately. Different roof tiles, different stucco texture, different everything. She didn't even try to make it convincing. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly arrogant. Probably both, I muttered. Marcus grinned. I've dealt with HOA boards before. Some of them think they're above the law. They're usually surprised when they find out they're not. After Marcus left, I spent the afternoon filing a police report online with the Scottsdale Police Department. I documented everything, the harassing violation notices, the escalating fines, and finally, the fraudulent insurance claim. I attached copies of the fake photographs and Marcus's preliminary findings. I didn't expect immediate action, but at least it was on record. The weekend passed quietly. I half expected Patricia to show up at my door or leave another violation notice, but nothing happened. I tried to enjoy the peace, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before another storm. Monday morning, I got a call from Derek Chen. "Ethan, I have some updates for you, and you're going to want to hear this." "I'm listening." "We completed our investigation into the photographs submitted by Patricia Connolly. As you suspected, those images are not of your property. We ran the photos through a reverse image search and found that 2 of them were stock photographs purchased from a home inspection website. The others appear to be from a property in Mesa that was condemned 4 years ago." "She used stock photos? Is she actually that stupid?" "Apparently so, but here's where it gets interesting. When our fraud investigator contacted Mrs. Connolly to ask her about the discrepancies, she doubled down. She insisted the photos were of your property and that you must have done emergency repairs after she filed her complaint. She claimed you were trying to cover up the violations." "That's insane." "It gets better. Our investigator asked her when she took the photos. She said she took them herself 3 weeks ago. When he pointed out that 2 of them were stock images with watermarks still visible, she hung up on him. I actually laughed. So what happens now? We're filing a formal fraud complaint with the Arizona Department of Insurance. We're also reporting her to local law enforcement. Filing false insurance claims is a felony in Arizona. She could face up to 3 years in prison and significant fines." "Good. There's one more thing. Our investigator got curious about whether you were the only target, so he pulled up all the claims filed by your HOA in the past 3 years. Ethan, there have been 17 claims filed by Patricia Connolly against various homeowners in your neighborhood. 17. That's an insane number. Did she use fake photos for all of them? We're investigating that now, but at least 4 other homeowners had their policies canceled or modified based on her complaints. We're reaching out to all of them." After I hung up with Derek, I sat in my car in the work parking lot for several minutes, trying to process everything. 17 claims, 4 canceled policies. Patricia had been running a systematic campaign of harassment and fraud, and she had been getting away with it for years. I called Valerie Novak and told her everything. "I want her arrested," I said. "She's been destroying people's lives." "She will be, but these things take time. The insurance company has to complete their investigation, the police have to build a case, and the district attorney has to decide whether to prosecute. We're talking months, possibly." "That's not good enough." "I know it's frustrating, but that's how the system works. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself. Patricia is going to realize her insurance scam failed, and she's going to escalate. People like her always do." Valerie was right, of course. Wednesday evening, I came home to find a certified letter from the HOA taped to my front door. Inside was a notice of a special assessment for emergency repairs to the community infrastructure. My share, $15,000, due within 30 days. I called the HOA management company immediately. Gloria answered, and she sounded tired. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I was expecting your call." "What is this special assessment? $15,000? That's insane." Mrs. Connolly pushed it through with an emergency board vote. She claimed the community's main water line needs replacement and that the work has to be done immediately. "Does the water line actually need replacement?" There was a long pause. "I've been working with this HOA for 12 years. The water line was replaced 6 years ago. It's in perfect condition." "So this is fake too." "I didn't say that." "Gloria, you don't have to say it. I know what's happening here. Patricia is retaliating because her insurance fraud didn't work." "Mr. Fitzgerald, I can't comment on board member motivations. All I can tell you is that you have 30 days to pay the assessment or the HOA will place a lien on your property." I hung up and immediately called Valerie again. "She's gone nuclear," I told her. "Fake special assessment for 15 grand. The HOA manager basically admitted the water line doesn't need work." "She's panicking. She knows the insurance fraud investigation is ongoing, and she's trying to force you out before everything falls apart. Do not pay that assessment. If I don't pay, they'll put a lien on my house. Let them try. The assessment is fraudulent, and you can challenge it in court. In fact, we should challenge it. I'll represent you pro bono." "Why would you do that?" Because I'm sick of people like Patricia Connolly abusing their power, and because this is a case I know I can win. The next week, Valerie filed a motion in Maricopa County Superior Court challenging the special assessment. The motion laid out everything: the harassment, the fraudulent insurance claims, the retaliatory assessment, all of it. We requested an emergency hearing to prevent the HOA from placing a lien on my property. The hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. In the meantime, things in the neighborhood started to shift. Word had gotten out about Patricia's insurance fraud. Derek Chen had contacted the other homeowners who had been targeted, and several of them were furious. It turned out that one couple had actually sold their house at a loss after their insurance was canceled, believing they had no other choice. Another family had spent $20,000 on unnecessary repairs to avoid policy cancellation. People started talking. A group chat formed. Someone created a Facebook group called Saguaro Heights HOA Accountability. Within 3 days, it had over 100 members. Patricia tried to maintain control. She sent out a mass email to all homeowners, claiming that disgruntled residents were spreading false information and that all HOA actions were lawful and proper. The email backfired spectacularly. People started posting their violation notices, their special assessments, and their stories of harassment. The Facebook group turned into a digital evidence locker of Patricia's abuse. On Tuesday evening, the night before our court hearing, I got a call from Detective Sarah Ramirez with the Scottsdale Police Department. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm calling regarding the fraud report you filed. We've been investigating Mrs. Connolly in coordination with the Arizona Department of Insurance, and we'd like to speak with you in person. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon?" "I have a court hearing tomorrow at 10 in the morning, but I'm free after that." "Perfect. Come by the station around 1. We'll need you to provide a detailed statement." The court hearing was held in a small courtroom with just Judge Linda Martinez presiding. Valerie represented me, and the HOA's attorney was a nervous-looking young man named Brett, who clearly had not expected things to go this far. Valerie presented our case methodically. She submitted the fraudulent violation notices, the fake insurance claim photos, Gloria's testimony about the unnecessary waterline assessment, and statements from other homeowners who had been targeted. It took 40 minutes. Brett tried to argue that the HOA had broad authority to enforce community standards and levy assessments, but Judge Martinez shut him down quickly. "Counsel, I've reviewed the evidence, and frankly, I'm appalled. This isn't about HOA authority. This is about a pattern of harassment and fraud. The special assessment is clearly retaliatory and based on fabricated need. I'm granting the motion and issuing a temporary injunction preventing the HOA from placing any liens on Mr. Fitzgerald's property. Furthermore, I'm ordering an independent audit of all HOA finances and assessments from the past 3 years. This hearing is adjourned." Brett looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Valerie and I walked out of the courtroom trying not to look too triumphant. "That went well," I said once we were in the hallway. "Judge Martinez doesn't tolerate fraud. She saw right through everything." Valerie checked her watch. "You have your police meeting in 2 hours. Want to grab lunch first?" We went to a Mexican restaurant near the courthouse and debriefed over tacos. Valerie seemed energized by the victory, but I was nervous about the police interview. "Just tell them everything," she advised. "Be honest, be detailed, and don't exaggerate. They're building a criminal case, and they need your testimony to be rock solid." At 1 o'clock, I walked into the Scottsdale Police Department and was directed to a small conference room. Detective Ramirez was waiting for me, along with a detective from the Arizona Department of Insurance named Thomas Green. They were thorough. For the next 2 hours, they walked me through everything that had happened, taking notes and asking follow-up questions. They showed me additional evidence they had gathered, records of Patricia submitting false insurance claims on behalf of other homeowners, financial records showing that some of the special assessment money had been diverted to personal accounts, and emails between Patricia and the other board members that suggested she had been running the HOA like a personal fiefdom. "Mr. Fitzgerald, what you've experienced is part of a much larger pattern," Detective Green explained. "We've identified at least 23 victims in your HOA community alone. Mrs. Connolly has been systematically targeting homeowners, filing false insurance claims, and collecting fraudulent fines and assessments. We estimate she's stolen over $200,000 in the past 3 years. I felt sick. $200,000? Possibly more. The audit ordered by the judge will help us determine the full extent of the theft. We're also investigating the other board members. It appears that 2 of them were complicit, while 2 others were just negligent and didn't ask questions. What happens now? Detective Ramirez leaned forward. We have enough evidence to arrest Mrs. Connolly on multiple felony charges: insurance fraud, theft, embezzlement, and criminal conspiracy. We're executing a warrant tomorrow morning. The next morning, Thursday, I was sitting in my home office trying to focus on work when my phone started blowing up with notifications from the neighborhood Facebook group. The messages all said variations of the same thing. Police at Patricia's house. I looked out my window but couldn't see anything from my location. I checked the Facebook group and saw that someone had posted a photo taken from across the street from Patricia's house. There were 2 police cars in her driveway, and officers were visible at the front door. 20 minutes later, another post. They arrested her. She's in handcuffs. I felt a strange mix of relief and vindication. It was really happening. Patricia Connolly was actually being held accountable. The local news picked up the story by that evening. HOA president arrested for insurance fraud and embezzlement was the headline on the Phoenix ABC affiliate. The report detailed the charges and mentioned that multiple victims had come forward. My name wasn't mentioned, thankfully, but it was clear they had done their research. Over the next few days, more information came out. Patricia had been embezzling HOA funds for years, hiding the theft through fake maintenance contracts and inflated special assessments. 2 other board members, the ones who had seemed to hang on her every word, were arrested as accomplices. They had helped her create false documentation and had received kickbacks. The HOA essentially collapsed. The management company terminated their contract, citing breach of trust. The remaining board members resigned. The community was left without leadership and with severely depleted reserve funds. But here's where things got interesting. The homeowners came together. Without Patricia's toxic influence, people started actually talking to each other and working collaboratively. A group of us formed an interim steering committee to manage basic functions while we figured out what to do long term. Valerie Novak agreed to serve as legal advisor. We hired a new management company that came highly recommended and had strong oversight protocols. We also voted to make some serious changes to the HOA bylaws: term limits for board members, mandatory financial audits every year, a process for homeowners to challenge violation notices. Basically, we put in safeguards to prevent another Patricia from taking over. Patricia's criminal trial took place 8 months later, in January. I was called to testify, along with a dozen other homeowners. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she had been following standard HOA practices and that any financial irregularities were unintentional errors, but the jury didn't buy it. She was convicted on 14 felony counts, multiple counts of insurance fraud, grand theft, embezzlement, and criminal conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 6 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to all victims, which totaled nearly $300,000 once all the fraudulent assessments and stolen funds were calculated. The 2 board members who had helped her received shorter sentences, 3 years each, and were also ordered to pay restitution. As for me, my life gradually returned to normal. My insurance policy was never in any real danger once the investigation cleared me. Fortress Home Insurance actually sent me a letter apologizing for any stress the situation had caused and thanking me for bringing the fraud to their attention. They also refunded me 2 years of premiums as a goodwill gesture, which was unexpected but appreciated. The other homeowners who had been victimized by Patricia received settlements from the insurance companies that had wrongfully canceled their policies. The couple who had sold their house at a loss filed a civil lawsuit and won a significant judgment that compensated them for their losses. The neighborhood itself transformed. Without the constant threat of harassment and violation notices, people started actually enjoying their homes. Block parties became regular events. Neighbors helped each other with yard work and home projects. The community pool, which had been poorly maintained under Patricia's regime, got properly renovated using the recovered embezzled funds. I became friends with several people I had barely known before, including Valerie and her husband. We discovered we had a lot in common and started having regular barbecues and game nights. The new HOA board, which was elected through a genuinely democratic process, operated with transparency and common sense. Violation notices became rare and were only issued for legitimate concerns. Fines were reasonable and used only as a last resort. The budget was posted online for everyone to see, and major decisions required homeowner votes. It's been 2 years now since Patricia's arrest. My house is still perfect. My lawn is whatever color it naturally wants to be based on reasonable watering, and I've never felt more comfortable in my community. Sometimes I think about how close I came to losing everything because of one person's greed and need for control. If my insurance agent Derek hadn't been thorough and skeptical, if he had just rubber-stamped Patricia's fraudulent claim, my policy would have been canceled. My mortgage could have been called due. I might have lost my home. But because people did their jobs with integrity, because Valerie was willing to help, because other homeowners had the courage to come forward with their own stories, justice actually prevailed. Last month, I ran into Gloria, the former HOA administrator, at a coffee shop in Scottsdale. She had left the management company and was working for a different firm now. "Ethan," she said, looking genuinely happy to see me. "How are you? How's the neighborhood?" "Really good, actually. It's like a completely different place." "I'm glad. You know, in all my years managing HOAs, Patricia was the worst board president I ever dealt with. I knew she was abusing her power, but I didn't know the extent of the fraud until everything came out. I should have done more. You helped when it mattered. Your testimony made a difference. I just wish I'd spoken up sooner. Maybe I could have prevented some people from getting hurt. Maybe, but you can't blame yourself for her choices. She was the one committing crimes, not you." We talked for a few more minutes, and then Gloria said something that stuck with me. "You know what I learned from that whole situation? HOAs are only as good as the people running them. The structure itself isn't the problem. It's when someone with bad intentions gets power and nobody stops them. That's when things go wrong." She was right, of course. An HOA can be a positive force for maintaining property values and community standards, or it can be a weapon used by petty tyrants to harass and control their neighbors. The difference comes down to accountability, transparency, and people being willing to stand up when they see something wrong. I think about that sometimes when I'm sitting on my back patio, looking out at the desert mountains and enjoying the peace of my home. I think about how I almost didn't fight back, how I almost just accepted Patricia's harassment as the price of living in a nice neighborhood. But I did fight back, and it made all the difference. My house is still my dream home. The Spanish colonial architecture is still beautiful, the backyard views are still spectacular, and now the neighborhood actually feels like a community instead of a dictatorship. The solar panels that Patricia hated so much are still on my roof, generating clean energy and saving me money every month. My lawn is healthy and appropriately watered based on actual weather conditions, not Patricia's arbitrary standards. And most importantly, I can come home every day without worrying about finding a violation notice on my door. The final piece of closure came about 6 months ago when the HOA's restitution fund distributed payments to all of Patricia's victims. I received a check for $12,000, representing all the fraudulent fines and legal costs I had incurred. Other homeowners received larger amounts based on what they had lost. It wasn't really about the money, though. It was about validation, about the system acknowledging that what happened to us was wrong and that we deserved compensation. I framed the news article about Patricia's conviction and hung it in my garage, not out of vindictiveness, but as a reminder. A reminder that standing up to bullies matters. A reminder that documentation and evidence make a difference. A reminder that the truth eventually comes out if you're patient and persistent. These days, when new homeowners move into the neighborhood, they get a packet of information that includes the HOA bylaws, community rules, and a brief history of what happened with the previous board. It's important that people know the story. Not to scare them, but to educate them about the importance of staying involved and holding leaders accountable. Several residents who lived through the Patricia era have become active in state-level HOA reform efforts. Arizona passed new legislation last year that strengthened oversight of HOA boards and made it easier for homeowners to challenge improper actions. The law is informally called Patricia's Law in our community, though the official name is something much more bureaucratic. Valerie Novak ran for state legislature and won. She's now a state representative focused on housing issues and consumer protection. We still get together for barbecues, and she still tells the story of our HOA case as an example of why strong consumer protections matter. As for me, I'm still in my house, still working as a software engineer, still living my quiet life in Scottsdale. I served one term on the HOA board because I felt I owed it to the community, but I didn't run for re-election. Leading an HOA is harder than it looks, and I have newfound respect for people who do it well. The neighborhood continues to thrive. Property values have actually increased since Patricia's removal, which I find ironic. Her constant claims that certain homeowners were degrading property values turned out to be projection. She was the one damaging the community's reputation. Last week, I was out front watering my plants when a moving truck pulled up 3 houses down. A young couple got out, looking excited but nervous the way all new homeowners do. I walked over and introduced myself. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said. "I'm Ethan. I live in the Spanish Colonial at the end of the block." "Thanks," the man said. "I'm Daniel. This is my wife, Claire. We're excited to be here, but I have to admit, we're a little intimidated by the HOA. We've heard stories about HOAs being nightmares." I smiled. "Well, we did have a nightmare HOA president a few years ago, but she's in prison now for fraud and embezzlement. The current board is great. They're reasonable people who care about the community without being crazy about it." Claire's eyes widened. "She went to prison?" "Oh yeah, it was a whole thing. Made the local news and everything. But that's all behind us now. Honestly, this is a great neighborhood with good people. You're going to love it here." We chatted for a few more minutes, and I gave them my phone number in case they needed anything. As I walked back to my house, I felt grateful. Grateful for my home, for my neighbors, for the fact that justice had prevailed, and for the lesson I learned about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My house looked beautiful in the golden light, and everything felt peaceful. This is what home should feel like: safe, comfortable, and free from harassment by petty tyrants who abuse their power. Patricia Connolly tried to take that away from me and from dozens of other homeowners. She failed, and now she's paying the price for her crimes. Meanwhile, I'm still here, in my dream home, in a neighborhood that finally lives up to its potential. And that feels like the best possible ending to the story. Sometimes people ask me if I have any regrets about how everything went down, if I wish I had handled things differently or avoided the conflict altogether. The answer is no. Could I have just paid Patricia's fraudulent fines and moved to avoid the hassle? Sure. But that would have been wrong, and it would have left her free to victimize other people. By standing up to her, by documenting everything, by working with the insurance company and the police, I helped put an end to years of abuse. That matters more than any temporary stress or inconvenience I experienced. The experience also taught me important lessons about documentation, about the legal system, and about the importance of community. I learned that you can't fight injustice alone, that you need allies and evidence and persistence. I also learned that most people are good and want to do the right thing when given the chance. Derek Chen, my insurance agent, could have just canceled my policy based on Patricia's fake claims. Instead, he investigated. Marcus Webb, the field adjuster, could have done a cursory inspection. Instead, he was thorough. Valerie Novak could have stayed out of it. Instead, she offered her help. Gloria could have stayed silent. Instead, she testified. All those individual choices to do the right thing added up to justice being served. That's the real lesson here. Systems only work when people make them work. Laws only matter when they're enforced. Communities only thrive when members participate and hold leaders accountable. Our HOA is better now because people learned that lesson. We're engaged, we ask questions, we demand transparency, and we don't tolerate abuse of power. That's how it should be everywhere. I think about the other families in other neighborhoods across Arizona, across America, who might be dealing with their own Patricia Connollys right now. HOA bullies who abuse their authority, who file false claims, who make people's lives miserable for no good reason. To those people, I would say, document everything, seek legal help, don't give up, and remember that fraud is a crime no matter who commits it. HOA board members are not above the law, even though some of them act like they are. And to people who are considering buying a home in an HOA community, do your research. Attend a board meeting before you buy. Talk to current residents. Look up whether there have been any legal issues or complaints. A good HOA can genuinely enhance your quality of life, but a bad one can make you miserable. As for me, I'm done with HOA drama. I've served my time on the board. I've testified at the trial. I've done my part to reform the system. Now I just want to enjoy my home and my life without any more excitement. Although, knowing my luck, there's probably some new drama brewing that I don't know about yet. That's just how life in an HOA community works, I guess. But at least now I know I can handle whatever comes my way. I survived Patricia Connolly and her insurance fraud scheme. I can survive anything. And if some new HOA tyrant ever tries to target me again, well, I know exactly what to do. Document, investigate, and never back down from the truth. Because that's what it takes to win against people who abuse their power. Evidence, persistence, and a refusal to be intimidated. Patricia learned that lesson the hard way. She's sitting in a prison cell right now because she thought she was untouchable, because she thought she could file fraudulent insurance claims and steal HOA funds without consequences. She was wrong, and that makes me smile every time I think about it. Justice isn't always quick, and it isn't always easy, but sometimes, just sometimes, it actually works exactly the way it's supposed to. The bad guys get caught, the good guys prevail, and everyone lives happily ever after in their well-maintained homes with reasonable lawn standards and transparent financial management. The end of Patricia's reign marked the beginning of something better for all of us in Saguaro Heights. We built a community worth living in, one based on mutual respect and common sense rather than fear and arbitrary enforcement. And I get to enjoy it every single day in my beautiful Spanish colonial home with the solar panels Patricia hated so much and the lawn that's whatever color nature intends it to be. Life is good. The HOA drama is over, and I'm finally, truly home.